Welcome back my channel, The Learning Destinations. I'm your host Avinash, and today is the Monday. So let's make our Monday with more productive and learn new technology with the learning destinations. So here we go and start our Monday with full of energy. So guys, as on my screen you can see that today I'm going to cover the topic SQL versus NoSQL. And guys, this is the term that we frequently use nowadays, whether we should choose the SQL DB or we should use the NoSQL DB. So after this tutorial, your concept regarding SQL versus NoSQL DB will be completely clear, and you will be yourself will be able to take the decision whether you should opt the SQL or the NoSQL database for your production grade system. So without any further delay, let's start this topic. Okay guys, so before I proceed towards the definitions, I would like to give you some glimpse of history. I'm going to introduce you right now about the SQL history, and firstly we can pronunciate it as a SQL or we can call it as a SQL, and the full form of SQL is a structured query language that has been first introduced by the Relational Software Inc., which is nowadays well known by the Oracle, and it has been introduced by the Oracle in 1979. However, the term called RDMS, as we know that the SQL based on Relational Database Management Services, and the term called RDMS is firstly introduced by Sir Charles Bachman in 1960, and he has invented first RDMS, which is called Integrated Data Store IDS, which is the first RDMS. Guys, when I say that RDMS, what do you understand by the RDMS? RDMS is nothing but it is a software used to store, manage, query and retrieve data stored in relational database is called RDMS. Now understand NoSQL. Guys, here NoSQL means it doesn't mean that there is a NoSQL. NoSQL means not only SQL, you can use other software database as well, right? So which is the meaning of NoSQL? So not only SQL, first time this concept is introduced by Carl Stross in 1998, and it is non-relational database. It means that we will see that what is the meaning of relational database and non-relational database in upcoming slide. However, just for your understanding, I am explaining you the relational database, which typically stores the value inside the tables and they are relational to each other. It means that whenever you make the query, the inside the database, they identify your query and they match the value of your query, and then they provide you the database based on the unique identifier number, which we call primary number, and that's how the relational database works. We will see the definitions in our next slide. Now let's understand from the definitions point of view, what is the meaning of SQL DB? Guys, when I say that the SQL DB, SQL basically a programming language, and the DB use this language to store data, called it as a SQL DB. The most popular example of SQL DB is MySQL, which is very common, and we all are using MySQL, and we all are using since a long this database. So it is very famous among us, which is also known as a relational database, or we can also call it as a relational database. When I say that what is the relational database, as I already explained in my previous slide, but still if you haven't yet remember correctly, let me give you the example once again. So basically it is where the data is written or they stored in the tables, in the rows, right? Generally how we write the queries inside the database, inside the MySQL. Those who have already used the MySQL database, they already know that, right? Generally we create the rows. Under the rows we create the tables and then they put the values, right? That's how we are writing. So that is what it is written here, where the data is written and stored in the tables in rows, and information links to multiple tables through your use of keys, right? So those who are DBA administrator, those who are frequently working on the database, they definitely understand the term what I am saying, that the keys, there is a primary keys, right, which identifies the values from the tables, which is the unique identifier. That's how that your database, simply whenever you make the query or your front-end applications make the query to your back-end application, it fetches the database and then it displays to you, which can be assigned to a row of data contained within a table. This unique key called as a primary key. Now how the NoSQL DB works, on what pattern it works. NoSQL database is basically a document-based database. What does it mean, guys? Basically, it stores the value in terms of key value pairs. Let's suppose that I'm giving, there is a one value we call employee, and the value is called Avinash. So it's simply the key is employee, and the value will be Avinash. So that is the best example of document-based database, and that's how that NoSQL DB stores the data. Okay guys, so far now we have seen about the history where the SQL came and where the NoSQL came into the picture. After that, we have understood the definitions, that what is the definition of SQL database, what is the definition of NoSQL database. Then we have also understood that what is the relational database and what is the RDMS, relational database management systems works. Now I'm going to give you the understanding over the scaling. Now SQL database and the NoSQL database both are referring to different scaling pattern. The SQL database is referring to the pattern of vertical scalability, or we can call vertical scalable, and NoSQL DB is referring the pattern of horizontal scaling. Right. So now I know that there is a questions coming into your mind, those who doesn't know what is the vertical scalability and what is the horizontal scaling. And that's the reason that I have already prepared the answers, because I know that this question simply comes in your mind, and that's why that the answer is already ready. So let's go through the firstly the theoretical values, right? And after that I will explain you what does it mean. So what it says, it keeps your existing infrastructure, but you can enhance computer power. You can increase the capacity of your single machine in terms of increasing the power of CPU and RAM without any disturbance of live data. So guys, does it mean, what does it mean? The vertical scaling is what? Let's suppose that you have one of the machines, right? You want to increase the capability of that machine. So you can simply increasing the capacity of RAM and CPU, right? In such a way, you are not increasing the capacity of machine or capacity of your platform by adding additional node. No, that is not the vertical scaling. Vertical scaling means there is a one node where your database is currently running, and there is a heavy load coming on your database. Somehow there is a performance issue. You want to increase the capacity. You are simply increasing the RAM and CPU value of that machine. It means that you are increasing the compute capability of your machines, and that's how you are enhancing the power of your machine. That is called vertical scaling. However, in horizontal scaling, it is simply different. In horizontal scaling, you can see that here we are adding the more instance. It means that the database is running on one of the particular machines. They are failing due to some performance issue. There is a load is getting increased. You can simply adding one more instance, right? In such a way, you can just increasing the stack of your instance, and that's how you are enhancing the capability of your operations activity of your database. That is called horizontal scaling. So in a nutshell, in the single machine, when you enhancing the capability of RAM and CPU utilization, that is called the vertical scaling. In horizontal scaling, you are simply adding the number of instances, and that is called the horizontal scaling. And SQL DB is referring the vertical scaling, and NoSQL DB is referring horizontal scaling. So after scaling, now we jump into the schema, and we will understand that about the SQL DB, how the SQL DB schema and how the NoSQL DB schema works, right? And so basically, SQL DB represents predefined schema. Guys, definitely those who doesn't belong from the database background, who doesn't know about the database, and they just simply started, especially for freshers, and for that definitely this questions comes in mind, what is the schema? And that's why that I have already predefined the definitions, and so you can easily understand that what is the meaning of schema. So basically, schema is the architecture of the database which doesn't hold data itself. It means that it doesn't store the data, but it is the architectures that how the data is arranged in your database. Okay, it explains the shape of data and how it might relate to other tables and models. So basically it relates the values inside the table. So whenever the query comes to the database, right, the schema, the developer basically design the schema, the architectures. Okay, so this kind of queries particular goes to these values, right? This is what the meaning of the schema that developer develops and designs, that how the tables and models relate to each other. However, it just opposite in NoSQL DB. It is just opposite, and NoSQL DB refer or represent dynamic schema for unstructured data. Okay guys, so far now we have seen about the history, we have understood the definitions point of view about the SQL and NoSQL, we have understood also about the RDS and RDMS, we have seen the scaling pattern, and finally we have understood about the schema. But guys, now here the question comes, which one should you choose? Which one should I choose for my production grade system? So I would like to tell you guys, it's very hard to predict because every database has its own advantages and disadvantages, and it totally depends on nature of your work. But still I try to figure it out, and that's why I have prepared some couple of points for your understanding. So guys, where the complex query is required, right, in such scenario you should use SQL database, and the MySQL is one of the best example. However, where there is a massive data flow, especially on the social networking website like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc., where the live data is coming and trillions of users hitting every day, in such kind of scenario you should use NoSQL database. That is what I have written there. Wherever the heavy load is coming on your database and you want fast processing, you should use particular NoSQL database. But there is a complex query, there is not enough load is generating, you want more security database, you should use SQL DB, because it's the SQL programming language itself is older, approx 40 to 50 years ago it has been invented. So we have more support in SQL database, and that's the reason that for complex query we should use the SQL programming language, we should use the SQL database particular, and for heavy massive data load we should use NoSQL database. Okay guys, so that's all for the day. Stay tuned with the Learning Destinations for more upcoming lectures, and if you have any queries, write me in the comment sections. Any feedback, any suggestions are always welcome. I will see you in my next upcoming tutorial. Till that time, bye bye. Thank you so much for watching this. And guys, one more request, please don't forget to subscribe my channel if you haven't yet subscribed, and share it with your friends and your colleagues. So I will see you in my next tutorial. Till the time, thank you so much for watching this. You have a good day.